Hey everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Susie Brigette White. I'm the Business Development Director at Prospera Business Network. If you wouldn't mind muting your mic as you are joining our group, that is super helpful, just to make sure that everyone can hear correctly all the things that we're talking about today. So there, obviously, I've got Lexi's information on the screen here right now for you to be able to see. You are welcome after this presentation to reach out to myself, and my email address is right there, and then hopefully you received the email from me this morning with the Zoom link. And then also Lexi is available as well, and she's the Montana Women's Business Center Program Director. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what Prospera does. We typically, in a non-crisis time, we do 4 things. We do no-cost business counseling, business trainings, where we have 800 online classes, as well as in-person classes. And then we also help businesses apply for business development grants. And so I know the word grant sparks a lot of people's interest. They're very key grants, and I'm happy to share that information with you offline. And then we also do gap financing, which means that when a business needs a loan and the bank can't finance the whole part of it, we come in and do the gap financing portion of it. So those are the 4 things we typically do as an organization. Obviously, right now we are on the front line answering all of your questions about the SBA loan programs, unemployment, how to pivot your business, where do you go to pay rent, or how do you pay rent if you can't, all those questions we're really trying to help people through. So we're here for you, and you can just send us an email if there's something that you have a particular question about. We are all working remotely as a staff right now, so you can try our offices and leave voicemails, but email is going to be probably the quickest for you. Before I get started, obviously you're all here to learn about these SBA programs, but this is a public announcement more than anything. Be sure to update your Google business page. If you have a Google business page, it's important that you are doing, that you're letting people know any updates with your particular business. I know the other day I went to the grocery store and they had closed, or they're now closing early. They've got limited hours, and it was frustrating, obviously, to go to the grocery store. I needed some medicine for my daughter, and so whatever you can, make sure that you're updating that Google business page, okay? All right, now here's the topic you're all here for. So I want to add a disclaimer here. The information that I'm including on this PowerPoint honestly is changing by the minute. At 9:45, I got a new email, and I did the best I could to kind of scoot as much information into this PowerPoint as I could, because the SBA and the US Treasury are obviously sending out updated information daily. And so if you have seen this webinar before, it's going to be different than the one you saw before, because I am honestly updating this webinar every single day. I'm trying to get you the most updated information. So disclaimer on that. So things are changing, be patient. Everyone is learning more about these programs every single day. So before we get started, I always want to make sure that people have a few things in mind before they start applying for all these loan and kind of forgiveness programs, and I'm putting that in air quotes. Before you get started, my advice to you is kind of know how much money you need. This is the time right now to update your monthly financials. This is the time to separate those commingling personal funds. I know we talk about it all the time, and business funds, and this is the time to try to finish up your taxes. I'll be talking to you more about why that's important in these next steps, but understand that this is the time for you to understand how much money you've made this last year, in 2020 and 2019, but then also understanding how much money you are going to need in 2020. So I have put in here a link to a revised cash flow document. It's a document that we use in a lot of our courses. The reason being is that it's important to understand, like, okay, let's say you apply for these loans. That may not be enough to get you through the end of the year. So I am recommending that people do put together revised 2020 budgets for yourself, just so you can really get a clear picture about the money that you think is coming in or the money that is going to be going out. And I am advising clients to actually just check in with those big clients that you have booked. I see a couple of people on here that are caterers. I see some people that are restaurant owners. Check in with those big groups that have already booked with you. Make sure that they're still moving forward so that you can put together an accurate cash flow projection for yourself. Also, I also like to make sure that people are connecting with your advisors. You know, if you take a class from us, any class that we offer, I always say, find your advisors, find the people, find the tribe that's going to be able to help you get through any situation. This is one of those situations, so I hope that you have these people in place. If you do not, I am working with a lot of folks that, a lot of businesses that are willing to take on new clients right now. So pop me a note if you don't have one of these people, but I'm happy to connect you. So obviously a banker, you know, obviously a lot of us are going to be needing a banker if you apply for one of the loans that I'm going to talk about today. An accountant, oh man, these guys are amazing. It's important to have a competent accountant and bookkeeper on your side if you don't have that internally. So make sure that, I mean, accountants, they're my favorite people. They really are. They really can help you understand what you're doing in your business. So it's important that you work with an accountant. And then I also like to mention a financial advisor. I know that that's a little off topic, but I know a lot of us are starting to see our quarterly statements come in the mail. I know I just got mine this week, and it's important to kind of check in, see what you can do to kind of make sure that you can maximize benefits during this time and making sure that you can stay on the path. Obviously, it's usually a long game when you're dealing with a financial advisor, but it's important to check in with them, especially in this time. You're paying them all year, so you might as well check in. All right, moving on to the next slide. Okay, before we get started, obviously talking about the particular loans through the federal relief programs, I like to mention that alternative financing options for your business are lines of credit. This is something that I recommend that any new business or established business sets up with your banker. This is something that helps people avoid putting credit or putting charges on credit cards so they don't get stuck with 18% interest cards later on. So basically a line of credit is something that you apply for through your bank. It's something that you typically have to reapply for each year. And, you know, for instance, our organization has one just in case. Let's say you need to buy a lot of inventory one year and you just don't have the cash flow to be able to cover it yet. A line of credit is a really great option for you. So I like to mention alternatives right now because, again, maybe you do that cash flow projection and you need more money than what you're going to be able to get from these relief programs. I also like to mention that SBA is doing bridge loans right now, and they're pretty easy to get, especially if you're applying for the PPP loan, which I'm going to talk to you about. It's a quick turnaround time. You can get up to $25,000, and again, that can kind of be helpful in kind of that temporary financing if you're looking for that. All right, this is what you're all here for. Talking about the Paycheck Protection Program and the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Moving forward, I'm going to refer to them as the PPP and the EIDL loan. Obviously, they're a mouthful, and so I'm just trying to make my life a little bit easier, and yours as well. So that's kind of the hip terminology right now are these two acronyms. So anyway, this is just an overview. We're going way more in depth today, but I just wanted to kind of give you a quick screenshot of what the difference is between these two programs because I'm getting a lot of questions and people are kind of confused about them. So the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, obviously here's our big keyword. Hopefully you can see my arrow moving back and forth across the screen here, paycheck. The money should be used for paychecks. And so, you know, all these other things should be kind of covered under these EIDL loans. So the eligibility with the PPP is small businesses, sole proprietors with less than 500 employees, which all of you on the call are, independent contractors and self-employed. I'll go into more detail about that, and private nonprofits with the 501c3 or 501c19 designation. I just got off the phone last night about 8 o'clock with the SBA director in the Helena office, and he said that in their national call, the 501c6s did come up in conversation. That's typically like a chamber organization. So I don't know if we're going to see some changes on that, but I wanted to let you know about that update. With the EIDL loan, it is businesses with less than 500 people, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and again, the private nonprofits. Again, the C6s can apply here, and the C19s can apply here, but not here with the PPP. So far. The uses, obviously payroll. This Paycheck Protection Program, payroll is the key here, including benefits. We'll go through all this. This is a general overview. Mortgage interest, rent, utilities, and then interest on debt incurred before February 15th. The other uses over here on the right-hand side with the EIDL loan is payroll, fixed debts, accounts payable, and other expenses that can't be paid because of the disaster's impact. So payroll obviously showing up on both of these. You just cannot double dip. You can't pay payroll, the same amount of payroll, the same period of payroll, excuse me, that you're paying out of the PPP for the same through the EIDL loan. I also do want to mention we are recording this. I'm seeing that come up in the chat room, and so please stay tuned. I will send out the link after our conversation today. The amount, obviously, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll over here, and over here it's up to $2 million, but applicants can also apply for the $10,000 up to, excuse me, $10,000 cash advance, which I'll talk to you more about that. Here, the fixed rate on the PPPs are 1% with no payments in the first 6 months. With the EIDL loan, it's 3.75 for businesses, 2.75 for eligible nonprofits, and there's no payments for 12 months. Some other info here, obviously, new loans under this program are eligible for forgiveness if the business maintains payroll continuity from February 15th to June 30th. On the EIDL side, these are up to 30-year term loans, and so I'll talk to you guys more about that. The other thing that's not on this chart that I like to always make sure that I mention, just because a lot of you guys have gotten loans in the past, with the PPP, there's no personal guarantee. And then with the EIDL loan, there is a personal guarantee with more than a $200,000 loan, and there's no collateral for loans less than $25,000. That's amazing. Okay, moving down the line here. So this is what you will see when you go to apply for the EIDL loan at sba.gov/disaster. I'm going to actually walk you through the application that you will see when you do this. So it's a very quick process. If you applied for the EIDL loan the very first week that it became available, and it took you anywhere from 7 to 25 hours, unfortunately, you've applied, but you have to reapply under this new website program if you'd like the cash advance. So it's unfortunate news. I have clients, it's a full gamut. I've got a couple that I've started to hear from the SBA on the EIDL loans. I'm hearing the average time is about 3 weeks to be able to hear from someone. So don't expect that money to just pop into your cash account or your banking account. I'm even hearing clients that applied for the very first day and they still haven't heard. So know that things are moving slowly, but they're doing the best they can. They've never seen numbers like this before, okay? All right, so here's the first page, just talks about this being a streamlined process. This next page, you're gonna have to make a choice. Here you're gonna choose one, depending on what you are, you're gonna choose one up here. Are you a 500 employee organization? Less than that? Are you sole proprietor? Are you a tribal business? Are you a private nonprofit? Here's the one that's kind of tricky for a lot of people. I've got a lot of clients, because we're a food and ag development center, that are in the farming industry. What I'm hearing from the SBA office is that you know, farms are not qualified to be able to, they're not eligible to be able to apply for an EIDL loan. But I do have a lot of small kind of market gardens. More than anything, they sell things at the farmers markets, they sell directly to restaurants, things like that. I am having them hit this number or hit that box right here, and then basically saying that they're like a nursery. I'm hearing that's okay if they're small scale. Obviously, if you've got cattle, if you've got farmland, you're not eligible for this. But for the smaller makers, they're okay to just hit this button here. And then down here, you have to be able to hit all of these things. Review and check all the following. If you don't, you're not eligible. You're not engaged in illegal activity, you don't get 50%, or you aren't, delinquent on child support obligations, you're not an ag enterprise, example farm. Here, you do not do any sort of sexual nudity things. I know this application gets kind of personal, doesn't it? 1/3 of your gross annual income from legal gambling activities. This is actually lightened up a little bit, so if that's you, give me a call. I'll share with you new information. And then you're not in the business of lobbying, and you're not a government entity. Next page. See, we're flying through this already. We're already at number 2 here, business information. So here you're going to put in your business legal name, your trade name, and then if you obviously try to put in your EIN number here. If you are a sole proprietor, you need to put in that social security number. This is a drop down here, so you don't have many, you have all the options that they give you. As you can see, this is a drop down. This is where you'll click if you're a nonprofit. This is where you'll click if you're a franchise. Here are the key things that you need prior to applying. Again, you aren't signing into anything and logging in, so you got to have your information prepped prior to this moment. Gross revenues for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster, and they're saying that date is January 31. Your cost of goods sold here for the last 12 months. And then here is where I'm having people who are in the Airbnb industry. This is where they're putting in their lost rents. This is where I'm putting in any of our folks that have rental properties, things like that. That's where they're putting their loss of rents right here. And then last but not least on this page, nonprofit cost of operations for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. This is where you're going to put in your nonprofit expenses. If you're not a nonprofit, you don't need to fill this out. Next page. These top questions are for faith-based organizations. I don't think there are any on this call, but if there are, I've got a whole packet on that. They just put together new guidelines on that. Here, compensation from other sources received as a result of the disaster. You just have to disclose it. It doesn't mean that you are not eligible. You just have to disclose here and put an amount and then disclose what the item is. Let's say you got a grant or something like that. Primary business address, business email, business date established, current ownership sense. So here, if you're a nonprofit, go ahead and look at your 990s. Your business activity, your detailed business activity. Again, these are drop downs. This is the key here. If you're looking for that advance amount, that's up to $10,000. Number of employees as of January 31st, 2020. Do not include independent contractors in this number. If you're an organization like us that hires a lot of independent contractors, we are not including those folks here. They can apply on their own. So this number is very important. You need to make sure you've got documentation for it because this is that advance amount. And so it's important that that number is very accurate. We're already to the third tab here under business owners information. So here, you're going to enter in all your information. If you're a nonprofit, under this line, use the executive director or authorized representative information right here. Your ownership percentage, if you're a nonprofit, you're going to put a 0 here. If you're a business owner, obviously put in your percentage. If you have business partners, anyone over 20% is going to have to fill out this form, and you're going to have their information. So gather that prior to doing this form. Your email, social security number. Yes, if you are the nonprofit director, you need to put in your social security number, your birth date, place of birth, and U.S. citizen information. Again, all this information's here. This is where you'll add the additional owner. Next page. We're already to the fourth screen here, folks. We're moving straight ahead here. You've got a couple questions that you need to ask yourself here. Make sure that you choose well. Obviously, if you're debarred, if you owe money to the government, if you haven't paid your taxes, things like that, you've got to hit yes or no here. And then down below, if anyone helped you fill out this form, you have to put that information here and give permission to them to be able to have access to this information. Here's the key here. So obviously, this is the box that everybody's looking for. This red information over here is directly from the interim rule. To ensure that the greatest number of applicants can receive assistance during this challenging time, the amount of the advance will be determined by the number of small business pre-disaster as of January 31st, 2020 employees. The advance will provide $1,000 per employee up to a maximum of $10,000. So there you go. It says up to $10,000. There's a good chance you may not get it unless you've got the payroll to be able to prove that. All right, this is another question I'm getting a lot of, where to send the funds. This is not fraud. The SBA is actually asking for your bank name, account number, and your routing number. Whoops, sorry about that. And so you'll want to fill that out, and then you're just going to want to make sure that you self-certify because the first way that they did the EIDL loan program was less of a self-certify, and it ended up just totally bonking the system. They had to kind of change the self-certifying system so that basically what you're putting here is true and accurate. And so again, you're entering into, you're applying for a loan. What I'm hearing the next steps are is that you'll see a pull on your credit is the next thing I'm hearing in terms of steps. And like I said, in Montana, it's very few businesses that I've actually seen get money from this yet. So I have a lot of clients that are kind of checking in with me, letting me know if they've received that money. And if you're on this line, please let me know if you have applied, if you've received that money. I'm just trying to track the timeline here. So, all right, now it's time to do the questions for the EIDL loan. I'm gonna hop into, whoops, sorry about that. The controls for the chat box are right next to the controls to kind of move forward with your slide projection. So I'm gonna hop into the chat room. Okay, let's see here. Let's see, have you heard anything that the PPP loan, that the payroll, the employer, sorry, it kind of jumps around a little bit in Zoom. If you've had to do any Zoom meetings, it still has some quirks. There are some PPP questions. I'm going to answer those in a second. A question from Julie. So if we apply for the $10,000 advance through the EIDL program on the first day, April 3rd, do we have to reapply? No. April 3rd is fine. If you did that exact website and you did that exact application, you do not need to reapply. If you did a different application, which was prior to that April 3rd date, you will have to do it again. Okay, from Bree, oh, okay, looks like I've got some questions in the private chat. It's hard for me to do private chats right now. Go ahead and send me an email and I'll do the best I can to answer your questions offline. If you can, put them in the public chat just so I can say them out loud. This question is from Heather Mooney. How does it work for the EIDL, the $10,000 for payroll if all of our employees are independent contractors? Again, for the EIDL, you're gonna, if all of your, if you don't have any people on payroll, you're gonna have to put 0 there, so you won't qualify for the advance. So if you only have independent contractors there, they need to be filling this out on their own. Another question from Julie, what does the $10,000 have to be used for? So going back to that initial first slide, I'm just gonna pull out my slides here. I've got a paper copy right next to myself just to make sure I'm giving you the right information here. So it can be used for payroll. It just can't be used for the same time period of payroll that the PPP is gonna be used for. If you apply for that, if you're not applying for the PPP, you can use it for payroll. It can be used to pay fixed debts. It can be used to pay accounts payable. Let's say you owe money on an event that's coming up, or you've got some charges coming up that you owe, you can use it for all those things. And then other expenses that can't be paid because of the disaster's impact. If you are applying for the PPP, try not to use the EIDL program to pay for payroll. It just confuses a lot of things. So that's my advice to you. You can use it for payroll, but it can be very confusing. So we'll talk more about the PPP in a second here. Let's see here, sorry, Zoom, things move around quickly. Have you heard when, how they determine if they forgive the $1,000 per employee that you ask for an advance on? Okay, there's still a lot of concerns from the bank end of things on how that's actually going to turn out. So if you apply for the PPP loan, I am going to show you in the equation when you're applying for the PPP where that amount that potentially would be forgiven will show up with the PPP. Again, Bree, in your particular case, if you're just applying for the EIDL or the PPP, when you talk to the SBA loan officer, you'll be able to ask that particular question. Again, they are telling me to say that up to $10,000 can be forgiven. You know, if you do everything right and you show that you're only using these programs for exactly what they're made for, theoretically, they should be forgiven. It's hard because of liability. I can't say, yes, these things are going to be forgiven. But you know, if you do everything right and you listen to your loan officers, you should be fine. And scrolling down, can the EIDL be used for payroll loan taken? Again, it can be used for a fixed debt, and it can be used for payroll when it's not the same payroll period as the PPP. And we'll talk about that payroll period. Okay. Whitney to everyone. So my daycare just got started, licensed in February. Is this something I can still use? I am an only employee. So you have to have been in business by January 31st, I believe. I need to look at that one. I don't have that worksheet with me right now. I think you're fine, Whitney. You can pop me a note if you need me to pull the actual text from the interim rule. It's with the PPP that you have to be in business by February 15th, but for the EIDL loan, it can be January 31st. And yes, if you're the only employee, you would just put 1 there. From Sadie Morales, is there a percentage that you have to use for payroll for the $10,000 advance? That's a really good question. No, it's just in advance, and so it can be used for any of the items that you're listing here, Sadie. And again, those people have to be employees, but it can be used for any of those things. Again, it just cannot be used for the payroll time period that we're going to talk about in the PPP. Veronica, to everyone, I am a sole proprietor of my childcare, and I have one employee. Who would I claim myself also for payroll? Yes. Let's see here. Kathy, to everyone, is idle $10,000 advance good for purchasing my merchandise? Yes. Josh Abbott, if we are a seasonal business, is our total number of employees the number of different employees we had throughout the year, or the max number we had in one given payroll period? I have gotten this question a ton. There hasn't been a lot of clarity on it. There's been more clarity on the PPP loan. So what I've done is I've just talked to my the people that have called and just said, at your max, how many people did you have? But it's a tricky one, depending on how long those people have been around. Maybe it's only one pay period that you had 10 people versus 5. So that is a question I'm struggling with. And I'm gonna, Josh, if you wanna write me a note, I'm gonna do a follow-up with the district director on that one, because there really hasn't been any clarity on the idle one. So I'm writing that down myself. Okay, I'm going to move forward here because I want to make sure that I'm staying on top of this and staying on top of all your questions, because it's 10:26 and I want to make sure that you guys get out of here on time. So I know there are a couple questions here specific. I'm going to do the best I can, okay? All right, I'm going to move down here and move into PPP zone since there's a lot of overlap here. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to start talking about the PPP program, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. There are really only 2 websites I'm trusting at this point. As someone that is a part of the Small Business Administration through our Montana Women's Business Center program, there's only 2 websites I'm really trusting right now, because there's a lot of information out there. And like I said, the information is changing every day. It's been difficult to stay on top of, and so we're doing the best we can, but here is the most updated information. So here's the SBA website here. I do trust this website. I'm going to be perfectly honest, it doesn't have that much information on it. This interim rule just got updated. Oh, whoops, I put down 423. It was actually 413. Sorry about that. I've got a typo here. This interim rule, if anyone on this call is self-employed, or an independent contractor, anybody, you need to look at this particular document. This will go through your specific calculations. My calculations today are going to show you more generic calculations for people that have employees. This one goes into deep calculations on all those things, and that was just released. I just got it. And so honestly, it depends on your particular status and your information. It's very customized, so that's why I'm not going through it today with the big group. This U.S. Treasury website, this has been my favorite website. This has the most detail on it of any website out there. Trust this website. Again, this is the link for this one. It's home.treasury.gov, and this one goes through all of these documents that I have been spending a lot of time reviewing. All of my partners in lending, everybody who is an advisor is looking at this particular website. This is your website. So if you have any questions, this is where you're going to go for specifics, okay? Okay, I'm going to quickly go through the FAQs that the Treasury released, just to kind of quickly go through who is eligible, who's not eligible for the PPP. Now remember, going back to that initial slide, a majority of these things should be, of this loan should be spent on payroll. Again, don't try to mix all these other things and pay all these other crazy debts. Stay focused on payroll on this one. It's just going to make your life a lot easier, and the most will be forgiven that way. So obviously we all know this. The PPP authorizes up to $349 billion in forgivable loans. That's debatable. I'm hoping that that amount will be increased. You know, as of this morning, I just got a new document, but we have, I think they've, I don't want to even say bad information here, but I mean, even Montana alone is like hitting big numbers here. So I'm hoping that that amount is increased. The loan proceeds are used to cover payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utility costs over the 8-week period after the loan is made. So again, for these particular loans, the PPP, you are going to your lender to do these applications, okay? there is a list on the Treasury website about all the lenders that are able to do this. If you are at a credit union, there's a good chance that they are not going to be able to do this. Only a few credit unions, at least in Southwest Montana, I know are doing this. And there are even some banks that aren't doing these either. So make sure that you check out that list if your bank is not on that list. What I'm hearing is if you are needing to go to a new bank to do the PPP loan, you're going to have to move, once you get that loan, you're going to have to open up an account with that particular bank and become a client of that bank. So it's not something where you can stay at that bank and have this PPP loan with another bank. The other banks are requiring you to move over to their institution. So I want to mention that. This is also going to be forgiven as long as the employee and compensation levels are maintained. The payroll costs are capped at $100,000. Due to the likely high subscription, it is anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for non-payroll costs. Loan payments will be forgiven for 6 months. Where can I apply? The SBA lenders that are certified to be able to do this, again, on the Treasury website and the SBA website. It's just harder to find there, I'm going to be honest. Who can apply? This is my favorite one here. All businesses, including nonprofits, veterans organizations, tribal businesses, concerns, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, and independent contractors with 500 or fewer employees. Businesses in certain industries can have more than 500 employees. Again, I'm looking at who's here, and I don't think any of you have more than 500 employees. Again, for nonprofits, only 501c3 and 501c19s for the PPP. Okay, I also want to mention this here. Look at your taxes. So if you are an independent contractor, a sole proprietor, a self-employed individual, all those things, I know those terms are being used interchangeable or being used maybe inaccurately on occasion. So anyway, the key is here, go back and look at your taxes. How are you receiving your income on your taxes? On your Schedule C, your 1099. Ineligible is K-1 income. So let's say you have a variety of income sources, maybe even have some W-2s in there. The K-1 income will not qualify. What do I need to apply? You will need the Paycheck Protection Loan Program application, which we're going to walk through. And again, you're going to be submitting through a lender, most likely through an online portal through that bank. What other documents do I need to include? You're going to have all the documentation, and I'm going to go through that list here in a second. Do I need to look for other funds before applying for that program? No. I'm going to go ahead and kind of hold on to one. No, we are waiving the usual SBA requirements. So if you typically have applied for a loan, you know that the SBA takes a long time to get these loans through the program or through the system. These, I'm hearing, are getting turned around in about 7 to 10 days at most. So knowing that they're waiving a lot of the usual requirements is super helpful in making things happen quickly. How long will this program last? June 30th. How many loans can I take under this program? Only one. So if you have multiple EIN numbers, you can apply for multiple loans. If you only have one, but you have multiple branches, you can only apply for one. What can these loans be used for? Again, I'm presenting the same information in lots of different ways. Payroll costs, including benefits, interest on mortgage obligations incurred before February 15th, rent under lease agreements in force before February 15th, utilities for which service began before February 15th. So again, you have to have been in business before February 15th. I know that question keeps coming up. I'm getting a lot of questions too about people who have a home office, but they didn't actually have any sort of agreement, like a lease agreement with your company that is based out of your home and a lease to your home with some sort of like lease or rental agreement. If you don't have anything that is an actual lease or agreement or contract, you cannot use those. You cannot use your rent for forgiveness. What counts as payroll costs? Salary, wages, commissions, or tips capped at $100,000. Employee benefits, including cost for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave. Allowance for separation or dismissal. Payments required for the provisions of group healthcare benefits, including insurance premiums, and payment of any retirement benefit. State and local taxes assessed on compensation. For a sole proprietor or independent contractor, wages or commissions capped at $100,000. Does the PPP cover sick leave? Yes, it does. And it's very in detail on this. If you have more questions about this, I'm going to have you go look at the actual interim rule, which I put on the CARES Act screen there at our first slide for the PPP. How large can my loan be? Loans can be up to 2 months of your average payroll cost from the last year, plus an additional 25% of that amount. The amount is subject to a $10 million cap. Moving on. How much my loan will be forgiven. You will owe money when your loan is due if you use the loan amount for anything other than payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utility payments over the 8 weeks after getting the loan. Again, stay focused. Keep using this only for payroll. Also, you're going to owe money if you have reduced or decreased your full-time employee headcount. Level of payroll. Your loan forgiveness will also be reduced if you decrease salaries and wages by more than 25%. Rehiring. You have until June 30th to rehire and restore your full-time employees here. So making sure that you're doing that. How can I request a loan forgiveness? You're going to sorry about that. You can submit a request to the lender that is servicing the loan. The request will include documents that verify the number of full-time equivalent employees and pay rates, as well as the payments of eligible mortgage, lease, and utility obligations. You must certify that these documents are true in order for them to be forgiven. Again, I am waiting on more information, and so are the lenders on more about the forgiveness information. I'm hoping to see rolled out in the next few days or so. What's my interest rate? It's 1%. When do I need to start paying the interest on my loan? All payments are deferred for 6 months. However, interest will continue to accrue over this period. When is my loan due? 2 years. Can I pay the loan earlier? Yes. Do I need to pledge any collateral? No. Do I need to personally guarantee this loan? No. Do I need to certify? Yes. You're going to have to self-certify here that your current economic uncertainty makes this loan necessary to support your ongoing operations. The funds will be used to retain workers and maintain payroll, or to make mortgage, lease, or utility payments. You have not and will not receive another loan under this program. You will provide to the lender documentation that verifies the number of full-time equivalent employees on payroll and the dollar amounts of payroll costs covered. Payroll costs, covered mortgage interest payments, covered rent payments, and covered utility payments for the 8 weeks after getting this loan. I get a lot of questions about this with part-time employees. I am hearing with the lenders is that they are letting you include part-time employees there too. Again, loan forgiveness is just for local and state payroll costs, those covered interest payments, covered rent payments, and covered utility payments. And then again, you're just self-certifying a lot of extra things here, which I'm going to go through on the application. Now, here are a few items that you're going to want to prepare for the application, but again, check with your banker first. I want to make sure that you have that you've reached out to your banker at this point. If you think about applying and you know that you've reached out to them, that you've gotten copies of everything that they're going to need. So go ahead and reach out to that banker right now if you are planning on applying. Your standard small business, these are the items most likely that you're going to need to start to put together. Your 2019 and your 2020 payroll reports, and that's broken down into monthly payroll statements that will provide information on salary, wages, commissions, and tips. Any costs for the separation or dismissal of employees, costs for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, and any state or local taxes assessed on employee compensation. If your business pays for health insurance or retirement, you need to have copies of that information too. These are some other official forms that you're going to most likely need too. Your 941s, which are your quarterly tax filings. So I would have everything for 2019 and Q1 of 2020. Your 944s, and then a color copy of a government issued ID, the front and back. And so just take a picture of that. It just makes it easier on everyone. So again, more information. If your payroll report is in Excel format, it should be accompanied by 12 months of bank statements. So you just need to be able to back up that information. You may need to know the start date of your business and your NAICS code. So NAICS codes, I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but a NAICS code is a classification system for business establishments by the type of economic activity. So like for instance, if you're in manufacturing, there's a certain code that's associated with this. I'm told that it may be helpful in determining more about your loan if you know your NAICS code. If you're an independent contractor and self-employed individual, you're going to obviously need copies of your 1099s, any income and expense reports for 2019, and then again, if you're self-employed, your Schedule C, your 1099s. Here's the actual application that you're going to find on the SBA website and the Treasury website. I'm going to go through it step by step with you guys just so you understand what you're going to be filling in when you have access to those applications. I know some of you guys are still waiting for access to applications, and so be patient. Again, banks are doing the best they can to get those applications to you in a timely manner. Here you're going to check what you how you have filed. So you'll put that information, your trade name. Again, a lot of this information is the exact same things you just filled out on the EIDL loan. So I would go ahead and apply for that EIDL loan because you're going to have all that information ready to go. This is where you're going to put the average monthly payroll. Then you're going to multiply it by 2.5. You're going to add in the EIDL amount that that you may have received. Here's the problem. If you haven't heard from the EIDL yet, do not include it. But if you have and you have a loan with them, you're going to go ahead and put that amount that's in there, net the advance. So I know we talked about the advance amount. Let's say you end up getting like $2 grand from that advance. You would take out that amount from the advance. Here you're going to have the number of employees, full-time and part-time. And then here down below, you're going to have to do the applicant ownership again. For nonprofits, I just got the phone with the lender this morning. They are okay if you're putting in the EIN number here again instead of your social security number. So that's different than the EIDL. But here they're saying that the EIN number is working just fine. And then you're listing that you have a 0% ownership as a nonprofit, as the nonprofit person applying on behalf of the organization. Here's a sample calculation sheet that I received from one of my lenders that is sending this information out to their clients who are interested in applying for the PPP. It's just a way for them to kind of organize their documents prior to applying. On their particular application, they're putting, the employee name, salary, wages, paid leave, group health benefits, retirement benefits, the state and local taxes, then that total compensation. Then anything over $100,000 is basically getting maxed at $100,000. Again, here, this is that equation that we're talking about here. And then this just goes into more detail about what they're asking for at each number above. And again, every banker is doing this differently. And so I would reach out to them and see how they want you to kind of get the information to them. Again, this is a continuation of the application. They're going to ask questions about, have you filed for bankruptcy? If you have filed for bankruptcy in the past, you are still eligible here. But if you are in the middle of a presently involved bankruptcy claim, or you're in the middle of filing for bankruptcy, you are not eligible. I've gotten that questions a lot. If you have defaulted in the last 7 years and caused a loss to the government, you are not eligible. We've got some questions here about the EIDL loan. Number 4, has the applicant received an SBA EIDL loan between January 31st and April 3rd? Most of you are going to put no here because, like I said, most people in Montana have not received it. And you're just basically disclosing that, yes or no, you got that money. Then down below, making sure that everyone who is an owner has to initial here. And then within the last 5 years, for any felony, has the applicant or individual pleaded guilty, let's see here. Basically, have you basically been, been in trouble with the law here? You're going to have to put some answers here for you. It kind of goes into details here, so I want to make sure that you look at that carefully if that might be you. So again, a couple questions there for you. You're self-certifying here. Again, I will have this presentation available afterwards so you can look at this more in detail. Again, you're self-certifying here. Again, just everybody's got to sign if you're authorized or a 20% owner. This page, I like to point out this particular paragraph, just simply because I've got a lot of seasonal people on the line. You'll see here for seasonal businesses, the applicant may elect to instead use monthly average payrolls for the time period between February 15th, 2019 and June 30th, 2019, excluding costs over $1,000 on an annualized basis. For new businesses, average monthly payroll may be calculated using the time period from January 1 to February 29th. Oh, whoops, sorry about that. Excluding costs over $100,000. So again, if you're a seasonal company, this is where you're going to get your averages from. Again, more self-certification and disclaimers. There you go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hop into the chat box. I know there are a lot of questions about these things. I know I've got a ton of questions that I'm literally asking every single day for clarification on. We're all hoping for more information on a lot of these things here. I'm going to try to scroll back here. I'm going to start over here again with Josh Abbott. Again, you had mentioned about a seasonal business. I just included that information in there. The total number for the EIDL loan, going back to that question, again, this has been the tough question. I just want to make sure that you would have a payroll report to back up the number that you're going to put in that EIDL loan box. I'm going to skip over the EIDL loan stuff here. Okay, I'm going to start with Kay Van Norman. Regarding PPP, if I haven't filed my 2019 taxes yet, am I prevented from applying for either of these loans? No. I'm just recommending that you start getting them going. Obviously, they filed or that there is an extension right now that you don't need to have them done right now. But I'm hearing that it is nice to be able to have that information. It's helpful in applying for these loans, but it certainly does not make you ineligible. From Cindy Francis to everyone, I have 5 employees all laid off as my business is shut down. If I get the loan, do I start paying them even if they are not working? They have to come back on your payroll. They cannot be getting unemployment benefits. They have to come physically back on your payroll. What those people are going to do is up to you with their time. So I know that has been a really tricky question for a lot of the people that have that are in the situation where they're being ordered to be closed right now. And so I know that is tricky, but they would have to come back on your payroll. Okay, from KJ Conley, to everyone, I submitted the EIDL. Is it important to take to an SBA officer also? No, you're just going to have to disclose to them that you did apply for the EIDL and that you have not received any sort of loan from them yet. From Kay Van Norman, am I reading it right? It covers 8 weeks only. Yes. It's only going to be an 8-week period that it's covering payroll. So that's why with the EIDL loan, you can use the EIDL loan to pay for payroll, but it just can't be that same 8-week period. Once your loan starts with the bank, that's when the 8-week period starts. All right, Lori Addicts, to everyone. I am a DBA as a sole proprietor. Does that qualify? I would just check on your taxes to see how you are receiving your income. And so I would clarify with that. And then if you have more questions about that, again, your accountant is going to be your best friend right now and your best advisor. So I would reach out to them directly. C. Murphy, to everyone, can you define K1 income, please? I'm just hearing from the banks, they have been very generic in letting me know how they are kind of breaking that down, but they're saying if you've got anything on K1s, that is ineligible. From Lauren, to everyone, I own a small farm in town, and last summer was our first season in business. My business partner and I are the only people on payroll, which we ran for the 4th quarter of last year and paid ourselves a lump sum as we couldn't afford to pay ourselves until the end of the season. We didn't run any payroll during the winter, but we are planning on beginning to pay ourselves again this spring. How do I calculate the average monthly payroll to determine the loan amount, since the lump sum we paid ourselves doesn't accurately reflect what we are planning to pay ourselves consistently this season? Oh man, this question is coming up a ton. Again, that is why they're encouraging people to have their 2019 taxes done, because then what I'm hearing from the lending side is that they're looking at your taxes to see what you are putting down for your income, and then they're averaging that out per month. So that is what I'm hearing. Again, I have not gotten clarification on that. If you have particular questions about that, you can look at that interim final rule that I included on the CARES Act page. That goes into more detail about the actual equations. From Julie, to everyone, I have heard that employer payroll taxes will not be forgiven. Have you heard that? Also, is it rent and utilities for the 8 weeks only, or from February 15th to June 30th? You've got 2 questions here, so I'm going to start for the first one. I have heard that employer payroll taxes will not be forgiven. So it is payroll taxes, local and state, that are eligible. Also, is it rent and utilities for the 8 weeks only, or from February 15th to June 30th? That is a really great question. You know, the payroll portion of it has to be used the 8 weeks after you get the loan. So that's the key there. But with the utilities, I don't know that. I'm going to be really honest about that, because I think if you are proving that you're paying things like rent and utilities and you have contracts for those things, they were in they were in motion before that February 15th date. I think you're going to be okay to use it outside that time period, but I'm not exactly sure on that. Again, we haven't heard more about the loan forgiveness portion of it, so we're waiting for clarification on that to see if the rent and the utilities just need to be for those 8 weeks or if it can be for that whole time period. Carrie Barber to everyone. Under this program, is this just the PPP loan or any of the disaster loans offered? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, Terry. You're welcome to pop me a note or send me a text later on if I can clarify for you. But again, the EIDL loan is totally separate from the PPP loan. These are the SBA disaster loan options that are available. In terms of other options that are available, I'm still waiting to hear more from that. If there are going to be new loan programs that are going to be coming out or new grants or anything like that, I'm waiting on that. You know, these two programs are partnered with unemployment, which a lot of people are taking advantage of. So I would say that might answer your question, but I'm not exactly sure. From Sadie Morales to everyone, for PPP, if we still do not have work for employees after the 8 weeks of coverage, can they return to unemployment? That's what I'm told, is that yes, they go back to unemployment. So it's not really a great, you know, I think it's gonna, hopefully we will be through this in 2 months, right? But we don't know that, and yes, they at that point would return back to unemployment. So let's see, I think I've gotten through all the questions that you guys have asked. Again, I'm doing the best I can to understand this myself, so please reach out to me with particular questions. I'm going to do my best. I'm teaching a lot right now, so be patient with me. But again, other advisors that you should be leaning into are your lenders, so reach out to those guys, see if they can help you. Again, they cannot tell you what to put in these boxes. They can only say, hey, look at your taxes and your payroll reports to give that information. So know that they are not able to tell you exactly how much to apply for, okay? That is one thing that they've been asking me to clarify for people. And so please reach out to me. Let me see here if I've got my next screen here again. Here's my last screen. There's my information. Lexi is teaching these trainings as well, so you're welcome to reach out to her as well. So thank you so much for joining me today on this journey of relief funding. And we appreciate you tuning into Prospera Business Network, and we appreciate your support. So thank you so much. We'll be doing this webinar every week as we learn more information about these programs, and I get more clarification and Lexi gets more clarification. So tune in, and you're probably going to see an exact different a different presentation next time. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.